Welcome to the Advanced Materials Forum. My name is Joost. I'm Vice President Polyamides at DSM Engineering Plastics. In the next hour, we'll be looking at trends in the material industry together with some guests here at the table. Let me first introduce my colleague, Caroline Mitterlehner. Caroline?
Hello everyone, Caroline Mitterlehner. I'm Global Business Manager for T within DSM Engineering Plastics, globally responsible for growing our PPA business in the large engineering plastics market.
Jan-Pedro, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, Jan-Pedro Vis. I'm responsible for global procurement within engineering plastics, and I'm also responsible for the sustainability strategy of our company.
Harold?
My name is Harold van Melick. Since March 2018, I'm R&D Director for the new business group of DSM Additive Manufacturing. We're developing the new materials for 3D printing in close cooperation with engineering plastics and resins.
And next to me, Bert.
My name is Bert Havenith. I'm responsible for strategic and market intelligence.
Yeah, before we dive into it, maybe a short question. You made the move to the additive manufacturing.
Indeed.
I can imagine this is a very dynamic industry.
It is very dynamic, and it's dynamic in multi-facets. It's dynamic because customers, OEMs, are looking at this technology. Where can it be used, and what should I be doing with it? It's dynamic from technology point of view because new printing technologies are being developed, and there's continuous development in that. But also from material supplier side, because it was prototyping, but now it's gearing towards functional materials, performance materials, and that takes a lot of development. And it's every day there's a new technology coming up, so it's really exciting.
Can imagine, yeah. Maybe you mentioned you're both procurement officer and sustainability director. Yep. That sounds like two full-time jobs. How do you balance this, Jan-Pedro?
Just work harder for one, but yeah. Secondly, I think it's also a nice combination because we see that if you look at our business, the carbon footprint of our business comes 85% of the raw materials that we buy. So hence also the solution to get more sustainable is in getting better raw materials to either with a lower carbon footprint or shifting to bio-based or recycle-based alternatives to reduce our footprint.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, when we get into the markets where we're active, let's start with automotive. This is an industry which is, of course, now seeing a lot of changes, and also that requires materials to change a lot. Bert, can you share what kind of changes you see in this automotive industry?
In automotive, you see several trends. Basically, engineering plastics and high-performance plastics can profit from all of these. The biggest trends are, of course, fuel consumption reduction and emission reduction. More safety of the cars, connectivity, autonomous driving. And basically all of these will transition the complete mobility arena in the coming years. Let's say the most focus at this moment in time is basically on fuel consumption and emission reduction. And there the OEMs have many possibilities. So the combustion engine will be still there in the next years, but of course more and more electrical applications are also added. And also much more connectivity in the car, so also more electronics. Basically, it's more electronics, more electrical stuff in the car.
Wow. Yeah, before we go into some new technologies, you mentioned the combustion engine. So this is still on the roads today. What kind of material developments do you see there, or what kind of applications?
Yeah, so basically the first trick is to downsize the engine and then add advanced turbo systems. With the high pressures in these turbo systems, the temperature just goes up. And it automatically means that high-performance plastics have to be used over there.
And
so
when you say temperature goes up, what kind of temperatures do you think we see?
Yeah, basically even up to 230 degrees centigrades. So that's approximately 450 Fahrenheit.
Wow.
So that's quite huge.
Yeah, serious.
Yeah. So also friction is important because there are a lot of moving parts in the engine and the transmission. And also there with nylon 46, we have an excellent material with very low friction level. And we have proven with many OEMs that in the end that means a CO2 reduction of even up to 1 or 2 grams per kilometer CO2.
Wow, thank you. Harold, in the additive manufacturing, are you also involved in automotive projects?
Yes, we are, and the trends we see are, of course, let's say very similar or the same. But I guess additive manufacturing also opens up new opportunities. So far, additive manufacturing has been geared towards prototyping, and we're already in this business for 20, 30 years. But now you see that we're going to functional prototyping, small series, but also mass manufacturing for designs that cannot be achieved, let's say, in any other way. But what also might be very specific for automotive is focusing on spare parts. Spare parts, of course, I mean, it's a huge industry. There's a lot of locked capital in spare parts. If you can make spare parts on demand where they are needed, that could open a lot of opportunities for companies. And we're currently also printing a few spare parts on a Ducati bike and also on a Mini, where we make, for instance, air inlet manifolds that are not on stock anymore, that cannot pre-produce, and we just 3D print them, and they're very functional, and they're really working very well. And next to that, you also see needs for customization, small series, and then those spaces, additive manufacturing, can really bring a solution next to injection molding.
Nice. Your remark, spare parts, triggers me. We also see in the back screen here a light being replaced. Jan-Pedro, on circularity and recycling. A car is a complex system. What kind of issues or challenges do you see when it comes to recycling material in automotive?
Yeah, we see a few. So there's a lot of recycling already being done in automotive, but then we're talking really about the big parts, about metal. For instance, a bumper can be taken off, so that could be done more, but it is already in practice that bumpers are taking off and being recycled. What you see if you go deeper into a car and applications where we are in, you see that there are usually compounds, different kind of compounds, multi-material solutions that are put together, and these are much more difficult to be recycled. So that's why you see now that the industry is taking a next step, and we are also adopting that technology where we're going into chemical recycling, where we see that the materials that we're taking out of a car, that we don't mechanical recycle them, like a bumper, a PP bumper, but that we go back to oil actually and to put that back into the cracker, and then you get recycled material, but then chemical recycled, and then you get exactly the same properties like your virgin grade. So this has many benefits. Mechanical recycles, as we know, is cheap, but it comes also with lower properties. Sure. These solutions, our customers buy our PA46, our Stanley for their quality, their prime quality. Yeah. We guarantee with these solutions that we give exactly the same properties, exactly the same quality like the prime quality, and that's the advantage. It will come with a premium today. We are working, of course, my procurement heart is trying to get the costs down, and we will see these costs going down over time. But today, we need to be honest, it comes at a premium. We hope that we can motivate customers to step in now and to join us on our journey to get some volume, to make sure that we can drive the prices down over time.
Nice.
If I may add to that, for us, additive manufacturing, also recycling is very important, sustainable circularity. We're still relatively small in terms of volume, so for us this is also an excellent opportunity to be, let's say, more sustainable from the beginning. We're launching this PBT powder, or we've launched this PBT powder. Also that for us opens the opportunity for chemical recycling and really closing the loop. In the production, the powder that is remaining, we can take it back, recycle it. It's more stable anyway, but also end-use parts we can bring back into that chemical recycling loop. So from that perspective, we're fully aligned in that strategy.
Well, nice. Yeah, looking at this automotive industry and the complexities with the qualification and then requalification, there's also now bio-based materials coming on stream, the launch of BioStanil. What does it mean for our customers? Do they need to requalify the application that they have in automotive? Bert, can you say something?
As Jan-Pedro already explained, there's no requalification need, because basically this biomass is added into a big cracker and then ends up in monomer and in polymer. So the properties are exactly the same. Mm-hmm. Of course, we have to do mass balancing and certification, ISCC certification. Mm-hmm. So, and with that, basically you just prove that it is the same material as always. Yep.
Basically, if people ask me this question, I always say, today you also don't ask if the oil comes from Saudi Arabia, from Russia. It's exactly the same. We now got bio oil, we got maybe recycle oil, but it all is the first step that goes into the cracker. And then the monomers that come out have exactly the same specs, and then the polymers have exactly the same specs. The compounds have exactly the same specs.
Sure, customers will welcome that.
Yeah, it makes it easy for the customers, because we have seen that with EcoPax, we have Arnitel Eco, we have 40 Eco, we have our Arclon Repurpose. So we pioneered a lot in this space to give new grades to our customers, but that always comes with the customer request. Can you specify something different? Now we are offering something that is a seamless transition to what they're offering customers already ordering today, and the products they hopefully like today, that they can just buy exactly the same thing, but then bio-based and in the future recycled-based.
Sure, thank you. Anything to add?
No?
No? Okay, good. We share a lot about sustainability trends and material solutions. Maybe to go back to the trend in the industry itself. So we all hear about electrification, autonomous mobility. Caroline, can you share this convergence of automotive and electronics, what that means for our industry?
Right, so I think that's I'm now 14 years in the engineering plastics industry, and a very exciting development happening now. You see two completely independent industries merging actually into one industry. And you know, these industries have operated on different clock speeds, different approval times, and you basically see now the pressure increasing in automotive to really shorten the times of approvals and go with much faster innovation speed. So I think that is something very exciting. Now, we as engineering plastics, we have a lot of experience on the electronics and electrical side, which we can directly implement now into the automotive industry, where similar questions on electrical safety are coming up. We are very familiar with that already from our background in electronics and electrical. So yeah, from that perspective, I think we are very well equipped now already, and are very excited to see these trend happening of the convergence between the automotive and the electronics industry.
Sure. Can you share anything, because you mentioned electrical and the experience you gained in the electrical market? What kind of requirements or trends do you see related to fast charging, etc.?
Yeah, indeed. So, for example, fast charging is something that is highly evolving. One of the adoption barriers of e-mobility is, of course, the charging time, amongst others. So, to decrease the charging time, we see voltages rapidly increasing. So, the current models are operating on 400 volts, whereas we see already 800,000 volts even coming up, and that poses a really serious requirement on the electrical components in the car in terms of safety performance. So if you imagine a high voltage connector, what you don't want to have is tracking between the electrical pins. Now, one way to solve that is that you are working with an engineering plastics that is already has a high insulation by itself, so a very high comparative tracking index. And typically, those comparative tracking index go up to 600 volts in the standard. Now, we as engineering plastics have taken that already further now and have tested our materials to higher voltages. So we are very proud to say that we are one of the first ones now to present CTI ratings for our Akelon PA6 of about 700 volt, and for our 4T PPA range even beyond 825 volts. So we can really say we are prepared for this future of fast charging, high voltages trend.
Wow, nice. Harold, you also once shared with me that also in additive manufacturing you were making connectors and parts related to these topics. Can you share a little bit?
Yeah, and not only for let's say e-mobility, but also for electronics. And also there we're gearing towards mass manufacturing, because we do see that customers and one of our big customers wants to make parts that simply cannot be made by injection molding, because the feature detail they need and the design they want to make are just too complicated and cannot be made in a conventional injection molding. So there they want to go to additive manufacturing, because that's the only way, 3D printing, where they can make these parts. And then it's not really customized or personalized, because these are really, let's say, mass manufacturing of one design. But it's really mass manufacturing with additive manufacturing. So also that is one of the features, let's say, additive manufacturing can bring to the table. But also to the trends you mentioned, that does imply that you need materials that can deliver the same performance as can be brought by engineering plastics materials. So that's the challenge, certainly at the materials side, that we need to cover. Another thing maybe is that also in this whole speed of development, the whole digitization of the workflow is really a benefit of additive manufacturing, because we all know that making a mold, designing a mold, and correcting a mold is a tedious and thorough process.
Caroline mentioned that also there the development speed in automotive needs to shorten. So
and if you can do that fully digital, that really can speed up development.
That's also related to this industry 4.0
Exactly.
trend.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
you can design and then you can make it ready, simulate it, and then can make it ready for print. And without any mold, you can just directly print the part.
Wow, exciting.
Yep.
I hear a lot now about the fast charging and electrification. Bert, next to knowing a lot of what we do today, I know you also have a good view of the future. Do you think it will continue in this even higher charging and more voltage, or where do you see a few years from now this mobility going?
If you talk about electrical cars, so 800, 900 volt is already quite high level.
Mm-hmm.
We have also to think about the safety of passengers, and when there's an accident, that everybody gets safe out of the car. So my personal belief is that 800, 900 volt will be the maximum voltage. What you will see in the cars, and it's also linked to the trend of connectivity and also safety, much more advanced driver assist systems in the car. So more cameras, more sensors to avoid collisions. In the end, the cars will drive themselves, autonomous driving. But the basic conclusion is the cars get more electrical and the cars get more electronical. Much more electronics on board, much more electricals on board.
No, that's, I think, good news for people supplying also parts into this industry. Caroline, you mentioned about electrical safety and where your plastic need to satisfy, but also this signaling. Of course, if these cars start to be driving themselves, how do we make sure these brains of the cars stay intact and that the signaling is sensing the right information to brake the car and to steer? How do you look at those requirements?
Well, I think what you previously saw on entertainment, communication systems, also on safety system, which was very much in the luxury end, is now basically already the standard for any passenger car. Right, so the amount of connectors that you see in the car making those transitions possible is heavily increasing already today. And then I'm talking mainly about the high-speed data connection, or FACRA they also call them, which is a German standard for those kind of connectors. There are 15 per car already in, and they're rapidly increasing. Now, one of the important things is that those cars, they need to have a very high signal integrity to guarantee that there is no hiccup in the signals. And they go through reflow soldering process. So they need materials that are very high mechanical strength at high temperature. And the phenomena that you often see happening there, in especially polyamide materials, is blistering during this process, which can highly impact the performance of those connectors and the board as such. So we at DSM have really built up a long-term know-how on this reflow soldering process and on the blistering performance of our materials, and have been able to really bring a game-changing technology. So I think if you look to the 40 ACE technology, that's what I'm talking about. Our JTX8 is the material that has, as one of the only polyamide materials in the world, a JDEC moisture sensitivity rating of 1, which basically means zero blistering in this process and highest reliability of those units in the car.
So in the end, the result will be that those components will be safer in the car as well.
Exactly, and no reject during assembly, etc., where of course those blistering can occur.
Okay. Interesting. Jan-Pedro, now the procurement head, you hear a lot of challenging requirements, and how do you work with partners in your supply chain to satisfy these needs?
Yeah, we need to work closely both for our sustainability journey or just from the cost down part. And we're looking here at a wide range. If I focus on the sustainability part of tools that we're going to use, we of course have already a fishnet based polyamide 6 that we have already in the market now. So basically what we're doing is getting the fishnets out of the water and use these for mechanical recycling to get a low cost PA6 grade on the market. So there we need to make sure that we secure not only the parts that we buy, but the whole chain from getting the fish nets out of the water, from the distribution.
Complex process, I can imagine.
The whole value chain. Yeah. And we will be doing that as well with all the other, with the bio-based, with the recycles. It will be much more in the future that we trying to influence the whole value chain back to where the sources are coming from. Also that our customers want to know, are the sources that you're using sustainable? Are these the right sources? Can I trust these sources that they are in in a sustainable way, in an ethical way, harvest or came to market. So we are procurement looking both at cost but also at securing and assessing of this value chain if we trust that and if we want to work with that value chain.
Happy to hear. Let's switch to another industry. We mentioned that automotive is getting faster, more towards electronics. If we look at the electronics and electrical industry, Bert, what kind of trends do you see in that industry?
Yeah, basically everything becomes connected. Okay? You have connected cars, everybody has a smartphone, so that means connected humans. You have connected homes, and everything becomes more and more intelligence, so smart devices all over the place.
Sure.
And indeed, that implies much more electronics on board of a lot of systems, and even in consumer goods, you see these things applied. So, and that's why we have a very good position with our materials for this SMT connectors, but also for all the electrical parts.
Yeah, you mentioned SMT connector. I see the data farms in the background. So indeed, we normally as consumers don't see it, but we are generating masses of data that are somewhere processed. Caroline, your daily business, how do you interact with the requirements of that industry?
Well, we are, for I think more than 20 years, one of the leaders in the connector industry for consumer electronics, like I mentioned already in the beginning. So very long-standing history, also with our Stanil, where we not only build up the material know-how, but really deep application understanding on connectors like DDR connectors. We have been involved in generations of those DDR connector developments that are very inherent to those server farms. There is increasing requirement from server farms to have even more high-speed traffic. Okay. And on the other hand, you can imagine that those farms have an enormous energy consumption. So everything you can do to save energy on those is also something. So those connectors play a vital role in that. We are really at the forefront of those kind of developments with our
Because
materials.
if we look at indeed the data generation, I can imagine with these connected cars, I think this is still on a very small level, and in some regions, if that starts to explode globally and then really go to level 4 or 5 autonomous driving, there will be a lot more server farms, I guess, right, Bert?
Yeah, correct. And to add on the words of Caroline, basically these materials, signal integrity is very important. No signals should be lost. So our customers are looking for materials with a very low energy loss level. And that's what we also already provide with our materials.
Nice. If we look at this electronics market, Jan-Pedro, it's also, at least the supply chain is a bit shorter. Consumers are very important, and the opinions of consumers. You mentioned earlier sustainable solutions that we're developing. Can you share some elements of how that specific industry we generate both safety but also health and environment friendly solutions?
Yeah, so we're looking not only at carbon footprint and recyclability, very important point, but we're also looking at safe ingredients. So we're looking at where we can replace ingredients that are more safer for customers to use. So we have now an Untitled range where we use our halogenated flame retardants for replacement with non-halogen flame retardants, which makes these ingredients more safer. Basically these requirements that we see coming on safer ingredients on innovation, we did it much more with our partners. So what we're trying to do is get our suppliers much more closer to our R&D. So let them work together so that we can much faster react to all these requirements coming from our customers. To the speed was already mentioned a few times that is increasing in the automotive industry. To make sure that we can react to these questions, we let our supplier R&D team up with DSM R&D to get even smarter than we are today and make sure that we can go faster to market to meet the needs of our customers.
Okay.
And also in this space, additive manufacturing can add to that. Additive, by the fact that it's additive and not subtractive, reduces material consumption. So that's one thing. But also it offers a lot of opportunities to incorporate processes. So you can print conductive traces on your part while building your part, or incorporate them into the part. Or you can, let's say, eliminate secondary operations by incorporating into the additive manufacturing. So also in reducing the carbon footprint of the total solution, additive for sure can play a role.
Okay. Do you also see there the benefit that you can bring on tailoring, customizing products? Or
that's how additive started, of course. I mean, you can really customize, you can personalize The dental space is probably the first adopting it, because those are really one-offs. But that personalization, customization, you also see in electronics, you also see in automotive. So that additive is certainly geared towards that. But where it comes to really small features, complex designs, also for mass manufacturing, additive can for sure bring a solution.
Wow. And about data generation, we all have either mobile phones on us, some people even more than one. We're now mostly on 3G, 4G. This trend towards 5G, Caroline, what do you see happening there?
Well, I think every about 8 years, a new technology is popping up in terms of network technologies, and that's what we, at the transition we are now in, going from 4 to 5G network technology. The reason that 5G is needed is, again, increasing amount of data, increasing amount of devices that are connected at the same time. So the current network is at its limit. So in 2020, the 5G network will start to launch, and of course that has a lot of implications, not only for the telecommunication network itself, but also, of course, for the consumer devices that we are using. So we are, on the one hand, very much involved in the development, for example, of base stations for the telecommunication network, where you see new requirements and even more stringent requirements of material with very low moisture absorption. So.
So when you say different requirements, that is mostly in this moisture absorption, or the other requirements that are changing?
One moisture absorption. The other one is, if you look, of course, the way antennas are designed in the devices themselves. So there we're also looking into our 4T LDS materials that we actually already have in the previous generations, but new generation of antennas bring up new requirements. So we also
LDS means?
Laser direct structuring.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
All right, Jan-Pedro, looking at energy data, we also use a lot of energy for factories. The sustainability solutions we have there. I mean, what kind of activity do we do?
So we already have quite some projects implemented there. So we look at our electricity there mainly. And today 63% of our electricity comes from renewable sources. So we have a target by 2030 to get to 75%, actually to 75% plus, because we're not going to stop at 75%. Of our global energy use of all our manufacturing, our offices, everything, all the electricity that we use. So manufacturing and office environments. Of course, the vast majority is at our manufacturing plants, and we are so with 63% well on track to overachieve the 75% by 2030.
You seem very confident on this topic.
On this one, very much.
Thank you. Hey, maybe a dangerous topic, because we looked at connectors. Where do we see these wireless charging and new technologies? Can you share, Bert, how you personally look at that? Technologies run around electronics or other elements that you see popping up?
Yeah, basically a lot of technology is based on wireless. That means that there's also more radiation in the air, and that's why basically a lot of devices have to be protected so that they keep functioning, especially in cars when they drive autonomously. And of course, plastics can play a crucial role in making that transition towards the wireless electronical world we will live in 10 years from now.
Nice. Hey, let's move on to the next industry. I mean, we are very active in automotive and E&E, and we learn a lot from that. But of course, we also apply that in other industries. Bert, when you look outside of automotive and electronics, what kind of things do you see happening there and trends?
As a major trend, I strongly believe that the importance of these industries will increase. Because mobility is nice and connectivity is nice, but in future, food and water and health will become very crucial on this planet. And also there, engineering plastics and high-performance plastics play a big role in the different devices which are used either in food packaging, either in consumer goods. And also there, you see all kind of new technologies being applied. Also, the consumer goods are getting more connected, more smart. Smart meters. But I strongly believe that this is one of the very big growth sectors for the future.
Nice. Harold, now I'm really banking on you, counting on you. Of course, additive manufacturing and freedom to operate. I can imagine a little bit in automotive or in electronics, but outside of that, I guess you can basically make anything.
You
Is
can
that
do
a
anything.
good assumption? Or so
I guess so.
Give us some teasers or triggers of what is possible.
I mean, automotive is maybe not necessarily the first industry you think of when you do additive manufacturing, because you think of customization, personalization. So if you look at transportation, aerospace, railway, with smaller series, those are definitely areas where additive manufacturing will be adopted first, because it will simply be more cost effective to make these small series. But if you look at where additive manufacturing is really adopted, it's in the dental medical space, where you really have one-offs. Or one-offs, but still in mass manufacturing, because the biggest additive manufacturing or 3D printing application are these dental aligners, these clear dental aligners, and they print molds for it, and they print roughly, I think, 300,000 pieces a day.
Wow!
So these are huge numbers.
Yeah, sure.
So the dental area, where you have really personalization, that's an area where additive manufacturing is really strong. And what you see as well is sports and lifestyle. Probably everybody knows these nice sports shoes with these lattice structures, 3D printed lattice structures. That's really an area where you can't go in design with any other manufacturer.
You'll be able to manufacture a tennis racket that will help me specifically play better.
Even you, Joost. Even you.
I mean, and that's probably another trend that will come if you combine additive manufacturing with tape layment. That could lead to these breakthroughs.
Okay, stiffer materials.
Stiffer materials that incorporate fibers into the structures.
Wow.
Certainly something for the future.
Nice to hear. One area that, of course, also is very important to all of us actually is drinking water and getting water into all the regions in a safe and clean way. Caroline, I know you've been personally very active in finding solutions for the water treatment and faucet industry. Can you share what you've seen across the globe and what you're doing to make that even better?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it's a combination of safe in food contact and drinking water contact. So it's always first, the food contact is kind of your basic requirement to go in this kind of industry, and then drinking water is even a step up. Now, by saying that, I'm already saying this is a highly regulated industry. So you need to guarantee at all times that the materials that you're posing that are directly in contact with either food or water are fully safe and are not leaching any unwanted substances into your food or water. So I think we have, and there you really need in-depth regulatory know-how to make sure that materials you develop, the additives you put in, are in full compliance with these regulations.
And those regulations are not global, I guess.
No, unfortunately not. So that would make our life a lot easier, but there are lots of different regional. So in food, it's a bit easier. In drinking water, it's even more complex, than almost every country has its own regulation. So yeah, that indeed implies that it's quite complex to understand that field and make sure we really comply to those regulations. On the other hand, that's also something that we actually can offer to our customers, because they are struggling with the same thing. So we're really closely working together to solve those regulatory changes, because they are also not regulations that are there forever. No, you see that there are constantly changes applied because of new insights.
Sure, and we know that sometimes a regulation is copied to another region, right? Or that at least generally they follow each other. Is that a correct observation?
That in some cases that's the case, but you also have regions in the world that are...
Bert wants to comment on this one.
No, basically, it's like Caroline says, harmonization is good, but still there are many differences per country.
Yeah,
sure. And then on the procurement side, can imagine these legislations also put different requirements in different regions. How do you operate that from a global role? And
we just follow the different country regions, of course, but we tend to see where there are some countries more strict than others.
Sure.
And then to be ready for the future, we follow the most stricted one, so that if other follows, what you say, if they not follow, then okay. If they follow, then we are already ready with our global portfolio to serve all countries.
Good. And Harold, again, teasing the industry,
I mean,
drinking water, is that already printable, the application here?
I guess so. I mean, if we can make Ecopax printable, then that would certainly be possible. But maybe in general, let's say standardization or certification in additive manufacturing is still really starting. I mean, we have the first blue card on a flame retardant material, but also in the development of a blue card, which is the equivalent of the yellow card for injection molding materials. That's really, let's say, under development. So also the industry is really searching, well, how should we deal with this new method of manufacturing parts, and how should we certify that, and how should we test it, and how should we make sure that it's performing as good as the injection molding equivalent.
Okay.
So that's really developing, and that's something that's going on in the industry.
Forward,
yeah, and that's really needed. I mean, to get it to industrial manufacturing, you need that standardization and you need that certification.
Okay. Caroline, looking at the supply chain of these type of industries, I mean, we normally, when we privately buy a faucet, for example, we think we buy it in this country and it's made there, but we know that this industry is also global, and then there's manufacturer designers, and then there's people maybe on another side of the planet manufacturing them. How do you cope with these global coordinations and then having our teams work with people across the supply chain? Can you share something?
Yeah, sure. So it's definitely a globalized industry. Yeah? So you have brands, well, Grohe is very much known in Europe, but Kohler is the dominating US material, but they are delivering products all around the world. They are actually manufacturing large part of their faucets in China. So that also means we are cooperating with the team on the one hand in the US, on the other hand in China, to really make sure that we understand not only the design and the influence on the material choices, but also the actual manufacturing process and the implementation into the manufacturing. So that is like, we are already used to that in automotive, so that's we are operating in the same way. But you see specialized industry or general industry has been more regional in the past, but we also see actually there the same trend happening. You know, need to have global teams in place that support our customers on the OEM, tier side and molder side.
Yeah, complex trajectory. Hey, we're at the Advanced Materials Forum, so we also want to stretch it a little bit. Now I'm counting on your imagination and help us come up maybe with some even more future-oriented solutions. Automation, you talked about Industry 4.0, but let's talk about robots, drones, automated warehouses. Where in your specific areas do you see their touch points with our industry?
Yeah, again, also all these devices use a lot of...
What kind of devices?
Robots, drones.
Yeah,
they have traditional parts,
sure,
of course, like gears and bearings. But they also have, of course, a lot of electronics on board. Sometimes they have cameras on board. So the things we said before also apply to these kind of new systems.
Yeah, it might sound already very futuristic, but we are actually already in those kind of developments at this moment in time, right? Robotics and drones are growing heavily. So I think now is the time to be involved also there in the material specifications. Yeah. So this is not something of tomorrow, it's actually happening today already.
Now here I recently, when I visited Shenzhen, the team made me aware of something I was not aware of, but these automated guided vehicles, AGVs, was a very common word used there. But of course, we all know Amazon, Alibaba, etc. warehouses operated 24/7. Yeah, it's unbelievable if you look at the animation and the videos taken in those warehouses, where 1 or 2 people are operating warehouses that are actually fully automated and delivering everything we buy online these days automatically. Yeah.
And if you would put your print farm next to that warehouse, you can just print your spare part and put it in the warehouse and then ship it around the globe.
A lot of opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
And then have a drone deliver it to our shop floor. Sure.
Well, that's what we consumer ask for, right? We order till 11 o'clock in the evening, and next day you want to have it. So.
Yeah. Oh, but a lot of these developments might not require a million series of parts. So if you then can make it on 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 parts with additive manufacturing, that should really fill, let's say, a gap that there is now in these small series with injection molding.
Well, thank you. Well, I think we touched almost all industries in this 1 hour. This talk went from automotive to electronics, then started to mix it up with drones, automated vehicles, a lot of new manufacturing technology as well. Yeah, I would like to thank all of you for your sharing, and indeed invite maybe for a few final remarks. Jan-Pedro?
Yeah, but because we're focusing on technology trends, I would not like to focus on a technology trend, but also on a trend that we see out there in consumers and in governments and legislation. Coming back to the sustainability part, so the question is, why would we all start to produce these grades? First of all, we believe that we need to do something good as a planet, for the planet, as a company for the planet. But secondly, we also believe that that is a trend. It's not a technology trend, but that you see consumers already changing their behavior. They're caring about more sustainable products. And governments will follow that. So we will see that in 2030. So we promise that by 2030, we have a total alternative portfolio of grades that are either bio-based and recycle-based. That is one, because we care, but also that we believe the situation in 2030 will be totally different. Government will have legislations in place. We are closely following what's happening now in Europe and Brussels. They're usually first, and they will be also first here. And you will see legislation coming up for different industry that move ourselves if we want. Some companies will move, some companies will be moved by legislation in that direction. And we want to be ready. We don't want our customers be surprised in that they don't have solutions. So that's why we're creating these solutions today, and to make sure if that comes, either by choice or forced by legislation, that we are still be able to supply our customers.
Well, you mentioned alternative portfolio, so it doesn't mean that you completely switch.
No,
how do you approach this?
It's still we choice. So we don't decide what our customers buy. So we will have the regular portfolio. By the way, on that regular portfolio, we keep on working to get the CO2 footprint down. So work on renewable electricity, working with our suppliers to make sure that they have a lower CO2 footprint. But besides that, we have the bio-based and recycled portfolio. So customers can choose between the regular portfolio or the bio-based and the recycled alternative. It's their choice which way they want to go. And some customers might be stimulated by legislation, by governments, to go in one direction a bit faster than others.
Yeah, wow, thank you.
And it also goes for us. We don't want to wait for legislation. We really want to make it more sustainable, circular, reuse or repurpose materials. And of course, we closely work with engineering plastics on many of the thermoplastic grades. But also there, we see a lot of demand. For instance, we're printing a pedestrian bridge now, let's say, with a company. And also there are ideas if we could collect like bottle PET and convert that into material for a bridge, then really you can recycle, repurpose materials, and that's really visible and tangible for people. Nice. So these trends are coming.
Sure. Caroline, last words. One question I still had is we shared it. We talked about earlier this electrical needs and the thermal conductive materials that you have. Can you share anything there?
Yeah, so I think with increasing electronics, you also see that basically you have in relatively small packed spaces lots of heat generated, and you need to get rid of that heat. Mm-hmm. So typically engineering plastics are insulating materials, but we already, even let's say before the whole e-mobility, have been highly investing in this thermal conductivity portfolio, looking at lighting or e-motors. And that's what we are building on now. So we have from Stenil to Arnite, Excitron, offering thermal conductive materials. And I think there are two things that are highly important. On the one hand is a very stable polymer basis, and on the other hand is the knowledge on the additivation. So there our procurement team also comes in together with our suppliers, making sure we have highly stable thermal conductive compounds available.
Wow, challenging, I can imagine.
Yeah, so if you look to the stories, basically it's all around more differentiation in materials. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of different properties, more sophistication in production, and also more on sustainability and circular economy. Yeah. So still a bright future for our engineering plastics and high performance plastics.
Greatly clear summary of a very complex situation and wide offering. Thank you. Yeah, I know we are facing huge challenges and great requirements for innovation. But yeah, as you could have heard, we see a lot of solutions popping up, and we're confident that we will face again nice challenges in the future, and we're more than ready. I see. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for the sharing, Harold, Caroline.
Thanks, Joost.
Jan-Pedro.
Thanks, Joost.
Yeah. And thank you all for watching. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.